Embark on a journey of discovery and wonder as we explore the hidden depths of McBride's Cave, deep in the heart of Alabama's Bankhead National Forest. This limestone cave is a true natural treasure, home to a winding underground stream that has carved out a landscape of awe-inspiring flowstone and rimstone. But this cave's beauty is just the beginning of the adventure. As you venture deeper into the dark, mysterious depths, you'll be greeted by the eerie fluttering of bats and the chorus of crickets, adding an element of intrigue and mystery to your journey. Guided tours are available for the public, making it a popular destination for cavers and those interested in geology and natural history. So come along with us as we uncover the secrets of McBride's Cave. Unleash the adventurer within you and brace yourself for a heart-pumping, edge-of-your-seat story of rescue and danger. Join us as we take you on a journey filled with nail-biting moments of bravery and the will to survive. 11 daring cave explorers, including Gerald Moni, Nancy Allenbach, and Forrest Platt, set out to conquer McBride's Cave, a limestone cave located in Alabama's Bankhead National Forest. They planned a challenging yet exhilarating trip through the cave's upper and lower entrances, connected by a treacherous 6,000 feet of stream passage and 8 wet pits ranging from 20 to 90 feet deep. It's a popular destination for wetsuit vertical caving and known to be even more challenging during high water conditions. On May 31, 1997, the adventure begins as 11 seasoned cave explorers, including Gerald Moni, parked their cars near the spring entrance of McBride's Cave. After obtaining permission from the landowner, they left the campground while it was still raining, but they were not discouraged. They had been preparing for this trip for a while and were determined to complete it despite the weather forecast of continued rain and thunderstorms for the weekend. As they arrived at the cave, the rain seemed to have subsided a bit, giving them a glimmer of hope for a successful adventure. The cave was taking in a large stream, which disappeared into the boulders near the entrance. As they entered the cave at noon, they began their descent by climbing down a chimney and making 2 dry rappels of 23 and 34 feet before encountering high water at the bottom of the second drop. The water level complicated their descent of the next pit, a 25-foot drop. Several in the group remarked on the high water level, noting that the third pit was normally dry, but they didn't let that stop them. They continued on, pulling down the ropes as they ventured deeper into the cave. As they progressed, the water level grew higher than anyone had remembered from previous trips, but they pressed on, determined to complete their journey. They moved through the cave without incident until they reached the climb down near the top of the 90-foot pit. As the group approached the final obstacle, the climb down, a sense of unease washed over them. This 8-foot climb, with a plunge pool at the bottom, had caused an accident in the past. In 1992, a caver had fallen off this climb, striking a hidden ledge in the pool and breaking her foot, requiring rescue. But the group was determined to succeed. Despite the warning, Kressler, one of the members, jumped down the climb and into the pool and encouraged Platt, another member, to do the same, instructing her where to jump to avoid hitting the submerged ledge that had resulted in the earlier incident. Tragically, Platt jumped and hit the ledge, breaking her tibia just above the ankle. They discussed the possibility of retreat to a dry area and waiting for some of the party to exit the cave and re-rig the upper pits for her to climb out. But Platt bravely decided to keep moving and go out the lower entrance, which would probably get her out sooner. The group rigged the nearby 90-foot pit and everyone descended. The water was very strong, pounding the cavers as they rappelled. Platt had some trouble on the descent, but Chambers, one of the members, was able to belay from below and pull her to one side of the waterfall. As the group pressed on, the cave began to throw one obstacle after another at them. Brent Allenbach, one of the members, had his headlamp knocked down into his face, resulting in a cut on his nose. Straight, another member, went last after rigging the rope for pull-down. He received a minor injury to his ankle during the descent. The group had to make a difficult decision. Should they retreat or press on? Alternately carrying and assisting Platt, the group decided to continue down the next 2 pits. They came across a dangerous belly crawl leading to the 7th drop, a 28-foot pit broken by a large ledge 9 feet down. The crawl was about 50 feet long, and in the cave's flooded state, had only a few inches of airspace above the strong current. The rig point was in the stream crawl, right at the lip, and it was difficult to descend even in low water. Porter scouted the passage and reported that the rig point was underwater and that there were about 2 inches of airspace in the 1-foot-high, 8-foot-wide passage at the edge of the pit. The group knew that the only way to get through this obstacle was to grip the rope with their hands and slide down to the ledge, where they would then be out of the water and able to rig in and rappel the remaining 16 feet to the bottom. Several of the cavers, including Platt, made it through the crawl and down the pit. All had difficulty avoiding being washed over the drop, but nothing could have prepared them for the moment when Gerald Moni, one of their own, lost his grip on the rope and fell to the ledge 9 feet below, breaking his left femur. The sound of his cries for help echoed through the caverns, and the group knew they had to act fast. Chambers, one of the members, quickly climbed back up the 16-foot drop and found Moni lying on the ledge. He called down to the others, told them what had happened, and instructed them to go for help. But with their second rope still somewhere above, the group knew they had to improvise. Kressler, one of the members, quickly cut a section off the excess rope hanging down and, accompanied by Porter and Platt, set off for the next pit. As they pushed on, the cave seemed to come alive with danger. Steve Collins, one of the other members, started down the 9-foot drop, but had to be guided by Chambers to avoid landing on Moni. Several more cavers descended the drop, but not without incident. Nancy Allenbach, one of the members, broke a finger when her hand became pinched between the rope and the rock. With each passing moment, the stakes grew higher. The group had to navigate through flooded passages, strong currents, and treacherous ledges, but they were determined to make it out alive. They knew they were in for the adventure of a lifetime. The situation went worse when 2 of their own, Snyder and Zellner, were lost in the depths of the cave. The waterfall was arching out into the pit, leaving Moni out of the flow. He did not want to be moved and felt he could wait where he was until help could be brought in. With time running out, Collins and Chambers stayed behind with Moni, while the others descended the remaining 15 feet to the floor and started their journey towards the lower entrance. But the cave was not done testing them yet. Nancy Allenbach, one of the members, was hypothermic and could not stop shivering. She was wearing a polypro and a cave suit rather than a full wetsuit. The water appeared to be rising, and they could not afford to be trapped in the cave. Straight, one of the members, led the cavers through the treacherous 200 feet of low passage with about 5 inches of airspace and arrived at the last pit. All of the water funneled down a 3-foot diameter hole and fell 25 feet to a deep pool. They descended the pit and made their way through 2,500 feet of stream passage, including several sections of low airspace, to arrive at the spring entrance. But their journey was far from over, as they were faced with the task of rescuing their lost comrades and finding a way out before it's too late. The darkness enveloped Moni as he tumbled down the treacherous 9-foot drop, his cries echoing through the cavernous abyss. Time seemed to stand still as his companions Zellner and Snyder desperately battled to reach him. But fate was not on their side, as the low airspace passage leading from the bottom of the pit had sumped, and Moni, Chambers, Collins, Zellner, and Snyder were now trapped, flooded in, and at the mercy of the rising water. Moni lay injured on a narrow ledge, his body trembling from the chill as Collins valiantly climbed up and down the treacherous 16-foot drop, trying to keep warm and check on the water level. Meanwhile, Chambers, Zellner, and Snyder huddled together in a sandy room at the bottom of the drop, their fate uncertain as the water continued to rise. But hope was not lost. Kressler, Porter, and Platt had managed to escape the cave and set out to raise the alarm. They reached the cave owner's house and called for rescue, while Kressler and Porter set up a stream gauge to monitor the water level at the lower entrance. As the rescue team began to arrive, Straight and the Allenbachs also managed to escape the cave. But Platt and Nancy Allenbach were injured and had to be taken to an emergency room. But they did not give up and returned to wait for their companions. As the water level reached its peak at 7 p.m., the rescuers worked tirelessly to reach Moni and his companions. And finally, their efforts paid off as the water began to recede. The rescue mission was a race against time as the rescuers valiantly attempted to reach the trapped explorers. They approached from two fronts, the upper and lower entrances, determined to reach their companions no matter the cost. At the upper entrance, they were met with a formidable challenge, a deadly siphon that blocked their path at the third drop. But the team was not deterred, and they pressed on, determined to save their friends. Meanwhile, another team had entered the lower entrance and were making their way deeper into the cave. They battled against the strong current, bypassing two sumps and navigating through the treacherous, very low airspace sections. But the challenges were not over yet. As they reached the last pit, they were met with a formidable waterfall that seemed impossible to pass. But the team was not to be defeated, and with quick thinking, they pulled the rope to one side, and two cavers were able to climb up into the dry room at the top of the pit. With renewed determination, they pushed upstream, but their progress was soon halted by the same siphon that had stopped the team at the upper entrance, just below the room where the trapped party was waiting. With no other option, they retreated to the dry room at the top of the last pit and notified the rescuers outside. They waited for the water level to drop, using a small stove to heat tea and soup as they watched their stream gauge anxiously. The clock was ticking as the rescue team closely monitored the stream level and weather conditions, determined to reach the trapped cavers before it was too late. Every second felt like an eternity as they waited for the water level to drop. But as the hours passed, their patience was finally rewarded. By 5:30 a.m., the water level had dropped several inches, enough for the rescuers to finally make their way through to the trapped cavers. Snyder, Zellner, Collins, and Chambers were huddled together, cold and shivering, but thankfully unharmed. The harsh conditions of the cave had taken its toll on them, all suffering from hypothermia. Zellner was in the worst condition, his cave suit and polypro providing little protection against the cold. But the rescue team was there to help. They provided them with food and hot drinks, and with renewed strength, they were able to make their way out of the cave without further assistance. It was a long and grueling night, but they had emerged victorious, their spirits lifted by the sight of the first rays of sunlight, signaling their freedom from the treacherous cave. The rescue team then worked quickly to reach Moni, who lay injured on the narrow ledge. They lowered him from the ledge to the room below, carefully placing him in a sked litter. Moni was in pain, but was reasonably warm in his full wetsuit and nylon coveralls. With great care, the rescuers floated Moni through the 200-foot-long low airspace passage to the room at the top of the last pit. Then they lowered him down the drop into the waiting hands of rescuers below. A makeshift warming tent had been set up to provide shelter, and Moni rested there as medical personnel examined him. Despite his injury and the long stay in cold, wet conditions, Moni was in very good shape and was eager to leave the cave. Teams of cavers quickly moved him through the passage, and by 1:45 p.m., he was finally out of the cave. He was taken by helicopter to a hospital for treatment and made a full recovery. It was a race against time, but the rescuers had succeeded in saving Moni's life. The cave, once a prison, was now a distant memory as Moni looked up at the sky, grateful to be alive. The cavers learned a valuable lesson that day, that cave trips can take on a momentum of their own, and that pull-down trips are especially committing. They realized that they should have stopped, thought, and discussed hazards and options before making irrevocable decisions. They were grateful to have emerged from the cave alive and well, with a newfound appreciation for the dangers of caving and the importance of being prepared for any situation. We would like to thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed watching this, take a dive on the like and subscribe buttons and hit the bell icon so you get notified when we come back with another exciting story.